This example is going to do 9 fault simulations around bus 14 of the IEEE 39 bus system with some N-1 contingencies around the bus of interest. So we have a 300 MVA wind plant here at bus 14. Some changes we made are the number of wind turbines is 180, and it's still 1.667 MVA per wind turbine, so that gets us to the 300 MVA rating of the plant. We are going to have, in order to get full power output, we need to do make a change here. Put 180 wind powered arrays in service. We're setting it to voltage control mode, and we're only having 240 megawatts of power output. Load flow has been run on this case, so it's initializing at 1 per unit voltage, and you can see the initial Q output is 25.62 megabars. So we went through the load flow initialization in the September 14th session, and we recorded that. It should be posted on the NERC's website, and we'll put a link to that on the bootcamp webpage. Another thing we had to do that you'll need to be careful of is previous examples were 230 kV, so the transmission grid nominal voltage, change that from 230 to 345. We're going to go and look at, the inverter transformer doesn't have to be changed. This is, per wind turbine, we're just increasing the number of wind turbines. The park transformer does have to be changed. And so at minimum, you have to put the grid side voltage to 345. What should also be done is to change the nominal power from 75 to 300 MVA. We didn't do that here. We're going to do this before we post this file, but to get it to work, we had to change the tap ratio to 1.15. And so what that does is compensate for the extra voltage drop because the transformer reactance is too big. So what you should do is actually should be able to run it with a tap ratio of 1 and the nominal power of what it really needs to be. Okay, so that's the wind plant. At this point, we're just going to kind of point out what's around the circuit. So remember, in the September 14th session, we added some breakers. We added the fault here, fault number 1. This is fault number 1. We added a switch here, switch number 1 and switch number 2. So what that would do is put a fault on the terminals of the line to B15 and clear it. So since then, we added a fault number 2 on the line to bus 13 down here, and we put in switch number 3 and switch number 4, which can clear a fault here at this location. And there's one more line coming out of the bus, so we added a fault location here, fault number 3, and then we added switches 5 and 6. They're shown to be open right now because the last time we automated the study, that line was out of service. I did also add a ComTrade recorder, not recording as many channels as in the other examples. I have an RMS meter and a PQ meter. So what's happening is I have a 3-phase RMS meter, and it's giving me the individual phase RMS values, 3 of them on phases A, B, and C. Here in this block, I'm just taking the average of those. So that's going to give me a single estimate of the RMS voltage that feeds into the ComTrade with the P and the Q measurements at the plant terminals. So I'm recording 3 channels for each case. In a real study, of course, you want to maybe record some other outputs and synchronous machine speeds and angles. But for illustrative purposes here, that's what we're going to record. We're going to look at automating it So notice I've got 3 lines coming out of the bus that can be faulted or removed from service. So the script that automates this is called StudyScript.dwj. I have 3 line sets or pairs of lines. The line, 15, L15 is to bus 15. The name of the fault object is fault 1, and the breakers are switch 1 and switch 2. To run a fault study, first I load in the interfaces that I'm going to need for the switch and the fault and the ComTrade writer. So there's some order dependencies from apparently from some JavaScript functions that get redefined in these different service functions. So we do this. We end up parsing the script again. Each time we make a change to make sure that we're calling the right function that saves data to the object itself. So running the suite, I'm going to run a fault simulation on the line with all other lines in service. So that's the first one. And then I want to do n-1 contingencies that removes one of the other lines that's not faulted. So this has 3 lines coming out of the bus. If I take one out of the service before the fault and the fault clears the second line, that leaves only 1 line exiting the plant after that event. These are functions that set the line state, given a fault and the 2 breakers. I get the interfaces. This is where I have to parse the script file for the fault because I'm going to change the fault first, and then I'm going to change the breaker states. So there are actually 3 states that a line can be in. It can be out of service, which means I'm going to set the fault to never happen, the breakers to never close. So those breakers at each end of the line out of service, they're going to stay open. If I'm going to put a fault on the line, then I'm going to put the fault on at 2 seconds. The breakers are closed in steady state, but they're going to open at 2.05 seconds. So 50 milliseconds, 3 cycles, the fault is going to clear between 3 and 4 cycles. So the plant should write through. But the line is going to be out of service, so that's going to make a difference. And this is for the third state a line can be in is it's closed and it's not going to be faulted. So this breaker, the 2 breakers, start with a close time of less than 0 and a long opening time, so they never open during the simulation, and the fault is never applied. So these are functions that actually set, for example, for a breaker, the closing time gets set individually to each phase. The opening time, likewise, set to the same value. The faults, I'm not changing the fault impedance or the phases involved. I'm just changing the closing and the opening times. So what I would do then, this is all set up, I will click Run Script to Console. Once I've done that, I can go to the Jupyter Notebook number 7. That's going to plot all these, so I'm going to execute these cells to define the support functions and matplotlib. And I'll skip the PSCAD cell. We're going to configure for EMTP import. And these are the cases that are going to be imported. So there's 9 of them. So the first row here is the line to bus 13 is going to have the fault. X0 means no other lines out of service. XL15 means the line to bus 15 is out of service before I put the fault on the line to bus 13. And XL4 means the other line to bus 4 is out of service, and then I put the fault on the line to bus 13, but the line to bus 15 stays in service in that case. So let's load all of those. It's loading faster because the files are smaller and also because don't have as many Jupyter notebooks open anymore. So I will run the plots, and we can see that in some cases, if there's no fault, if there's no line out of service, the power output doesn't go to 0 in some cases, and it recovers pretty quickly. Certain cases it takes longer to recover, but in some cases, two cases in particular, notice the power is down to 0. So it can't export power when both the lines to bus 13 and 15 are out of service. If we went through the legends, we would see that with only the line bus 4 to bus 4 in service, especially after the dynamics of the fault event, that the plant trips. So even though the hosting capacity was predicted to be over 300 megawatts, in this case there is an issue. It could be resolved by changing control parameters, or maybe a type 4 wind turbine would do better, or we could just accept the fact that this really leaves the system in an N-2 condition, and so maybe we don't necessarily expect the plant to be able to produce output in that scenario.